Hello, and welcome back to Think Yourself Healthy podcast. I'm your host, Heather Barbieri. Before we dive into this episode, I just want to remind you that if you take a screenshot that you're listening and tag us on Instagram, we'll send you a 15% off discount for the 8-week Retrain Your Brain program. Just take a screenshot and tag me at Heather Barbieri RDN. Thanks for listening, and let's get right to it. Hello, everyone. On today's episode of Think Yourself Healthy, we have special guest, Dr. David Lipman. He is a doctor of chiropractic medicine, and we're going to discuss all things biooptimization. Thank you so much for being with us.
It's my pleasure. Thanks for having me today, Heather.
So tell me, where are you coming from today?
We're in South Florida, Boca Raton, Southeast Florida, sort of near Fort Lauderdale, West Palm Beach, maybe 45 minutes from Miami. So not a horrible place to be all year round, I have to say.
Absolutely not, especially for our vitamin D, right?
That used to be my nickname when I was a teenager. I started taking vitamins when I was a young teen. My friends used to make fun of me. Nobody was doing it back then. That's what they called me, vitamin D.
I love that. So you practice what you preach. It's very, very evident, just taking a physical look at you. So tell the audience a little bit about you and your qualifications that have kind of brought you down this path of biooptimization and how you use this in your practice to help support your patients.
Yes, absolutely. So my journey actually started when I was about 10 years old. There was a boy that lived next door. He was a couple of years older. And his father was into the martial arts and Eastern philosophy. So he actually got me to start working out when I was 10 years old. I mean, nobody was really working out then. We played sports in the street, we rode our bikes, but, to actually put attention into exercise wasn't something that, we did. It was just not part of the culture at that time. This is like the early 1970s. And so I took to it, and he also got me off of Captain Crunch and Wonder Bread and start to eat like real food. So that happened like, coinciding at the same time. So the whole idea about exercising to get your body strong and to eat food that your body can benefit from was kind of instilled, and I just took to it. He was big, he was in great shape. Neighborhood we lived in, there were certain challenges, and didn't want to be victimized, and this was an opportunity to start to get strong, and because certain things had happened when I was younger that kind of put me at a deficit, and just didn't want to just have that happen, and I was growing up. So that was a big part of the motivation. But as I grew, the implementation of exercise and eating clean was just part of my my whole self. It just became my whole direction. My mom used to like go crazy because she had this big wooden cutting bowl. I was using it for salads, putting everything in it, lettuce and all the vegetables and meat on top of it. And so she still, kids me about it right today, which is fine. But that, I think, was my mindset going into when I wasn't supposed to be a chiropractor. I was going into a family business. It was a plumbing manufacturing business. It was about 60 years old, and it started in the 1930s. And I was being primed at a young age to go into it. However, when I was 15, I had a motorcycle injury and I broke my neck in 2 spots. And it was actually a chiropractor that I met a couple of years later in a gym that I was working at during a college job in the summer. And I didn't even know what a chiropractor was. My parents didn't go to them. None of my friends did. So I didn't even know what that was. And anyway, he convinced me to come in. Also a big guy, worked out, very healthy looking guy. He looked like Clark Kent, like he would pull off his thing and the S would be there. And anyway, he gave me my first adjustment. I'd taken an x-ray, showed how I actually had, 2 broken necks from the past, 2 broken vertebrae, rather. And then gave me my first adjustment. And it's like one of those things that happens once in a lifetime, perhaps, where like all of a sudden, like everything opens up and you just I realized like this was my direction. And he mentored me, and so having the health conscious background and finding a profession that I never heard about that's based on getting the body to do its best healing and to remove obstacles to that and to facilitate, through nutrition and things like that, to get people to be healthy, because nothing can heal the body like the body can heal the body. So that's
absolutely
really, yeah. So it's been like a personal journey that turned into a professional one, but it didn't stop there. It continued. And now there's 2 things that are going on. First, the modern world that we're living in today is at war against us in so many ways. So we have to be our own doctors, and we have to fortify ourselves against the the ills of the modern world. We have to understand what they are, and to invest in things on a daily basis. To you don't do detox for 12 days. You do detox every day. We have to minimize our exposure to those things. We have to understand where we're breaking down, and it always goes to the cellular level, which I'll talk about a little bit later. But doing processes every day that tap into our body's ability to do its best healing, to grow, to get strong, and to also have things to protect us against how the modern world is hurting us in so many ways. So I continue to develop that more for me. I start from me. It's like, okay, this is some great new technology, I want it, and then of course I'll share it with my patients. I'll implement it in the practice. But I don't take everything I see. Can't. But that's where it started in the beginning, and it's continued to be. I feel like I'm like in a new career. I'm in my 60s, and I feel like I still got like 30 years ahead. So we'll see.
Oh, that's beautiful. It's true that when you do what you love, it never feels like work, right? So much of what you said speaks to my heart. It actually got me a little teary-eyed as you were talking. What you were speaking to resonates so deeply within me. As a registered dietitian nutritionist, nutrition is so fundamental in our journey to well-being, whether it's physical, mental, or spiritual. Mm-hmm. And so everything that you're saying just resonates on such a deep level. But more importantly, I was just having a conversation with my 11-year-old nephew the other night, and I was expressing to him that he is at a very pivotal age right now, and what he chooses to invest his time, energy, and effort into is going to shape the man that he becomes. And so I was expressing to him the need to get off of the addiction for the refined, ultra-processed foods, start incorporating more movement, strength training into his routine rather than being so tied to technology. Because what I'm seeing manifest is just a hormonal potential mess down the line.
Sure.
And I know that at this age, especially for young boys, with confidence, getting ready to go into middle school, feeling good physically, mentally, emotionally is going to really have a huge impact on the journey that unfolds for him over these next many years into his adulthood. And I feel like this is something that's really missing. The emphasis of this is really missing within our youth, especially in our public school educations, where many of these programs have been they're just barely hanging on in terms of physical activity, health, and nutrition. So I love the fact that you had the capacity to embrace this at such a early age and allow it to shape and help impact the man that you became, and then the services that you offer as a result of that. It's really beautiful. So thank you for sharing that with us.
Absolutely. And I wanted to speak to something you just said. When we were, in the 70s, when I was in, middle school and junior high school and high school, we couldn't graduate without gym class. And we still had the remnants of what they started in the 50s in about 4,000 high schools around the country, where there were physical fitness challenges and levels that you had to achieve to be able to graduate from the physical fitness end of high school. And this was something that was started again in the early 50s. Like, the name of the person's program escapes me, but during gym class, these guys were climbing monkey bars, climbing ropes. They had all these things that they were required to do. Now, in the early 60s, President Kennedy put out the President's Council on Physical Fitness, which was an extension of that. So we actually had that, and we had to meet certain criteria. When I was in high school, each year there were higher levels. If you were a freshman, you'd have to reach these levels of pull-ups, sit-ups, push-ups, running, and then each year you had to get more and more. And that was something that started in the 1950s, and that's all but gone today. You don't even need physical education to graduate. So that's something that the society has really done us harm. And what I see, and I'm sure you agree, is that the more convenient our lives have become and been made, starting with probably the TV remote. I used to be my dad's TV remote, He didn't get up, but I got up. So, the more
Yes.
life has become, the more it's harmed us, because our bodies need something to stress and adapt to. So if our lifestyles don't provide that, we have to create that somehow. So to start your nephew at a young age at 11, I think it's a great idea.
That's such great information that you just shared. And in our conversation that him and I had the other night, I was talking to him about emotional regulation and how important moving the body is with emotional regulation. I was explaining to him that emotions are chemicals in motion, and that these chemicals, if they aren't properly expressed out of our physical body, then they get trapped underneath the fascia of the muscle. And this can, contribute to a lot of physical ailments that pale us down the line.
No, absolutely. And you're right. There's a different biochemistry of physical fitness versus sedentary lifestyle. And there are, very identifiable biochemical changes that happen. So when you are getting into that fitness lifestyle, it does give you a lot of not only the discipline of being in that, but it also translates to other parts of your life. Like you're saying, interactions with relationships, confidence in trying new things. I mean, the list goes on and on. So if you can find that discipline to make that part of your lifestyle, just like eating, drinking, sleeping, and breathing, then that's going to be the best thing you could do to kind of set yourself up to navigate this world. It's like for a young person, as you said, and make that the foundation that they go through life with, because those things will keep coming up even into adulthood, of course. But having that as part of your life will give you the best chance of being able to navigate it in a healthy way that, doesn't give you PTSD from your life.
Advice for the listeners. So for me, my journey, it started for personal reasons, just like, most individuals like ourselves. Started with nutrition, and ultimately throughout my journey, it really has led me down to basic cellular function. All health has to be addressed at the cellular level. And this is where our entire allopathic medicine system seems to miss the target.
Yes.
And so there's a lot of individuals out there who are suffering unnecessarily by poor advice, poor recommendations, and not getting really to the root of the cause. And that is, let's evaluate and investigate what's happening at that cellular level. So tell us a little bit about, you and some of your expertise around this whole biooptimization and cellular level function type of approach.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you. And thanks for sharing about your own story too, because I find people like you and I that are in this, to serve others. We've all come from some kind of deficit that we had to overcome. I don't think you can take that, genuine journey and want to serve people unless you've come through something yourself and it, changed your life or saved your life. In your case, probably so. And so, I think there's no question that, you've been purposed for what you do because of that. And I believe that same thing. And like you said, I don't feel like it's work every day. I feel like I'm just living my purpose of what I've been, made to do here. And I also know that because I tried other things that, just never worked. And I even left this for a while, about 6 years. And I came back to it because to be honest, I asked God, I said, God, if this is the direction you want me to go back to, please tell me, make it clear. And God makes things clear when you ask him like that. So
you were raised in an environment where you had a successful, established profession that could have been handed over, that you were being encouraged to pursue. And despite all of the conditioning and programming that was happening in your life, you chose to honor your heart, and you chose to listen to what your gut was calling you towards. And I think this is where many, many people miss the mark in their life journey, because society has programmed us in a sense with certain expectation based on family beliefs, family, morals, values, all of those things. So for you at such a young age to have the capacity to really step into that self-authority and be proactive with your journey moving forward is something extremely commendable.
Well, I appreciate that. And I mean, just truth be told, one of the hardest things for me to do is to tell my dad at 19 that I didn't want to go into the business. And I'm adopted, so, oh boy. My dad's gone, but I just owe him the kind of person that he was to say, what do you want to do? And you just asked me that. And I told him, and from that moment, he was in full support of that. And he was a tennis player. So anytime his friends got hurt when I was practicing, you go see my son.
I love that.
I was fortunate that I had that kind of support in him, because he was my, my rock and my mentor.
Mhm.
But I also know in retrospect, based on what I was just saying to you before we just had this exchange, is that I think God will let you break your neck in a motorcycle accident when you're 15 to move you to where he has planned for you. And I believe that wholeheartedly. I never would have understood that back then, but I know it now without question. So
you're tearing up once again, because again, what you're speaking to is so personal for me. But I truly believe that everything within our life journey is for our highest and greatest good. And often we tend to have so much resistance because we don't trust what is already within us, that guidance that is already helping to shape us down our path. Another thing I want to speak to that I have recognized as a dietitian in my journey is that it seems to me that those who have practiced healthy lifestyle by eating clean diets, trying to be mindful of the chemicals that they're being exposed to, what they're putting on in their body, what they're exposing themselves to in terms of media and music and movies and even just print. All of these things have an impact on our ability to listen to that inner calling. The more, in my opinion, the more clean the vessel is, the greater the chance we have at honoring that call and truly being able to hear it. So it warms my heart over and over every time I get to have a conversation with another being who has honored that journey early in their adulthood, or for some like you, even in their childhood. And then see the abundance and all of the beautiful magic that has been created as a result to that. There's something to it when we can trust in the process, stay consistent with the things that we value. Just beautiful things manifest as a result of that, in my opinion, and a personal experience.
Yeah, I completely agree with you. I've lived it myself, and it's allowed me even more recently. When I decided to go back to practice, I said I stopped for about 6 years when I came to Florida, and things happened, but I ultimately went back and I dedicated myself, to my purpose. So I no longer said, I'm doing this for me anymore. I told God, if he wants me to do this, I'm doing it for him. And he made it pretty clear. So in that, it's given me the confidence to say, something, I'm not taking insurance anymore. Everybody else takes insurance. And I think my profession is largely, and other professions too, are very one-dimensional on how they help people, or really the lack of help, because they're letting insurance companies dictate what they can and can't do because of their reimbursement. So that business model just doesn't work. And even though people told me, you're going to go back to practice in a place you've never been before, where there's 4 chiropractors in your shopping center, and you're not going to take insurance, I said, absolutely. And I felt the confidence because I was honoring what I believed was my purpose. I didn't know what I was going to do or how I was going to do it. I just knew that that was my way to go about it. And it's never proven me wrong. And it's given me opportunities to even be sitting here with you today.
Mm-hmm.
So much more information and knowledge that I had, 10 years ago, 12 years ago, when I started back to this, because of, I believe that I've made it so clear to me, or it's been made so clear to me, that this is my purpose, that I want to know every inch of what I do and how do I do it better, and how can I help people beyond what I've already learned in school, or, since after. So that's definitely been playing itself out. And I feel grateful and blessed. I'm not patting myself on the back. I feel grateful that I was able to go through that and take the chances. I wasn't following my heart. It wasn't my heart that I was following. It was something that was inside that just told me, this is your purpose. Trust what your mind is telling you and how to go about it. And, of course, ask people along the way. I'm never afraid to ask for, opinions and things like that, people that are smarter than me. The best thing you can do is have smarter people than you around you. And I do look for that. And everybody you come across has something to offer. Even every day, my patients, it's not like a doctor's office here. It's like a big cousins club of people sharing information. We're all here together. I know a little bit more than, many of them, and they look to me for that. But sometimes I learn from them too, which is amazing. I learn more about the body because somebody comes in with something I have never seen before. And wow, new challenge. And you know something? I have to tell you something, Heather. Every time that happens, within 2 weeks, something I've never seen before comes in a second time. And I've just had an experience 2 weeks ago to figure it out. And here it is again. So that doesn't just happen.
No, isn't that the beauty? Oh my goodness. I want to speak and commend you on your ability to hold strong to that calling of not taking insurance. I myself, when I decided to go into private practice, I chose the same route. I said, I'm not going into this corrupted system that is holding us back from being able to create the change that is so desperately needed. And so I feel that it's very important for practitioners like ourselves to have the courage to say, you know what, we're going to do it a little differently because this is the way that we know is going to help shift the paradigm of the broken system in the long run. So the more people that have the capacity to stand in that power and say, you know what, the skills and knowledge that I have are truly valuable. And if you choose to invest in this process, it's going to be priceless in the end. And ultimately, they won't need their insurance because they aren't going to need to be going to the doctor for all of these little things that are currently occurring as a result of the broken system.
Absolutely. And again, that word investment, you got to think of health as an investment because by design, it's not going to happen. And all that health insurance premium that's paid each month, that's what you should be paying into the proactive things that you can be doing on a regular basis. I mean, that's a system that works. Imagine if doctors in this country got paid to keep us healthy. What a different paradigm that could be. So, all right, they're not going to offer it to us. We do it ourselves. There's enough information out there, enough people like you or myself and, smaller communities that can be those resources. That's what our purpose is. And so people aren't, they just have to wake up. A lot of people are afraid to go away from what their medical doctor says. Still people out there, even after the baby boomers that say, if my doctor doesn't recommend it, it's got no value. Usually when they lose their quality of life and that system has failed them, that's when they start looking. And I see people down here every day, 20 years younger than me, that don't feel good. And I say, well, this is what I've done, and this is what you can have too. But you're the one walking around in that body every day. So what you do every day is going to have way more effect than myself or any other practitioner can have. So please be motivated to own that, learn about it, and make that journey personal to you so you can really start to, feel better than you are right now.
Oh, absolutely. I think that is sound advice for the listeners. I think that it's so important. All of the things that we're talking about are so vital. I think that society is kind of there with what we've experienced over the last 4 years, the disappointment within the 3-letter agencies and their recommendations and our healthcare system itself. I think that people are finally starting to question things and starting to look a little bit differently at the approach to trying to get better. I know for myself that my practice has picked up immensely over the last several years as a result of people being frustrated and banging their heads against the wall and saying, you know what, I think we're going to try it your way. So I think we're there.
Yeah, we have a way to go, but we still, I think the paradigm is shifting, which is nice. Certainly in the younger generation, I'd say the 30-somethings, I'm seeing a lot more of that. The 60-something, the 70-something, they're still, most of them that I come across are still stuck in their own, they think the system is going to work. They have Medicare. They don't want to pay out of pocket for anything. They work 40 years of their lives to pay into that. That's all true, but then you have to make a decision. If that system still isn't going to help sustain you, yeah, what's great about living another 20 years if you don't feel good for that 20 years, So
Right.
but I'm finding more and more young people are willing to tap into, what's called biohacking. I came up with biooptimization because I didn't want to use the same word that people are using, but it's essentially the same thing as how do we tap into the body's own best healing capabilities? As I said in the beginning, removing obstacles, minimizing exposure to toxins, and then finding our deficiencies and fortifying that so that body can do its best work. And I tell people, you have to invest in your cells. Your cells are the single place where everything health starts and everything unhealth starts. So focusing on things that fortify that, things like red light therapy, things like micronutrient testing to see what your actual deficiencies are, and understanding how certain things in our environment that are actually deemed to be safe are actually hurting us very much. And so those are some of the things that I'm trying to share with my patients so they can start to be educated and start to minimize some of the things that are really causing a lot of this cellular duress, and to be able to help unwind that and get back to maximizing, oxygenation of the cells and use for energy production. We have the Superhuman protocol, which hyper oxidizes your cells to get oxygen, to bring your cells to like 34 horsepower instead of only 2 horsepower, which is what so many people are walking around with, which causes inflammation and all those downline effects. But again, that's still the thrust, is looking at that cellular component as the place to go with all of our focus in terms of optimizing health. So
I love this. And it's funny that you call your program bio-optimization, and I've deemed mine cellular optimization. And I think that we use a lot of the same modalities in our protocol. Outside of red light therapy, what other kind of tools what other kind of tricks do you use in your toolbox?
yeah, so for the bio-optimization part, we use a 3-step process, which is trademarked and copyrighted as the Superhuman protocol. Superhuman protocol combines a pulsed electromagnetic field, which helps to optimize the body's polarity. Again, our physiological processes happen because of plus and minus charges exchanging in certain ways. As we bring nutrients into our cell, remove waste products. It's how our nervous system works, our muscular system. It's all plus and minus charges that are electromagnetic. And it's the way our red blood cells are optimized to carry oxygen from our lungs into our tissues. So we are essentially by electromagnetic beings, but we don't have our own battery. The earth has been our battery for centuries, but now we've paved over it in much of the places people live. We wear rubber soles, so we're not getting that pulse each day unless you're walking barefoot on the beach or on the grass for like 30 minutes. And the worst part about it is that all this electricity around us and wireless devices and Bluetooth and 5G, they are causing high frequency electromagnetic fields that are interrupting our normal polarity. So our cells are not functioning because of that. So all the processes at a cellular level are being facing deficit because of that. And part of that is not being able to get oxygen in that energy producing part of the cell to optimize that energy. So post-electromagnetic field is where we start for the Superhuman protocol. The second step is exercise with oxygen therapy. So we have a Bowflex stepper where you can use the upper and lower part of the body, but you're wearing a mask that's connected to a cylinder that has 98% oxygen purity, about 900 liters worth. So instead of breathing in while exercising, the 20% that our atmosphere gives us, you're breathing in almost 100%. Now, during that exercise bout, you're going to do a series of sprints. So remember, when you create a sprint, you're creating oxygen debt. You've just used up more oxygen than your body has, so we need to take that oxygen in. So it actually increases the partial pressure of oxygen in our lungs coming into our bloodstream. But now, again, we're not bringing in 20% concentration, we're bringing in 98%. So what happens is that each sprint you do, you're taking more and more and recovering faster and faster. So your sprints get better and better and better, instead of typically when you're doing sprints, your first few are your best and then you start to lose gas. Well, it's the opposite. And so once you've flooded your tissue with all that oxygen, then you go into the red light bed, which we have here is very powerful. And it drives all that oxygen into the cell, displaces what they call reactive oxygen species in the mitochondria, so oxygen can latch on and optimize the energy cycle of that cell. So again, with this much saturation and precluding it with the PMF, this is truly a superhuman protocol. This is what makes that superhuman. Now, it doesn't give us anything we're not capable of, but nobody's walking around like this.
Right. I love this, that you are putting this into practice. It makes me want to get on a plane, come down to Boca Raton and test this out myself. This morning I was doing laps in the pool. I jumped in the pool and was swimming some laps, and I was just thinking to myself, I celebrated my 48th birthday yesterday, And the last 3 years of my journey have been a real struggle. I got COVID September 1st of 21. I had a fever of 104 for 11 days. It fried my hypothalamus, shutting down. Basically, essentially, I lost all access to my parasympathetic nervous system. And so for the last 3 years, I had been going through the allopathic medical system, navigating it that way, as well as navigating it the holistic way. And once I was introduced to the idea of this battery or this electrical being that we are, it really allowed for things to start making sense. And as I started incorporating some of these technologies and tools into my own personal journey, it was a complete game changer.
So again, you're not being a victim, you're being a victor over there, because you're allowing yourself to take your knowledge base and put it right up against, what life's thrown at you, maybe since, the womb, as you mentioned. But how cool is it that you are a person that can utilize these tools, and you're facing it with, a courage and a assuredness that, this is what I got going on, and this is what I'm going to get, done about it, because I have that kind of control. That's not the mentality that most people in your situation would normally have. So I commend you for that, because that shows the strength and, your belief system, not only for the people that you help, but for your very self.
Right. Thank you for that validation. I appreciate that. And I honestly can say that these last 3 years have been a gift for me. And to be perfectly honest, for the last 30 years or 27 years at that point, I had really lost touch from most of society because I was so optimal, because I woke up feeling so energetic, so amazing, so empowered every single day, that when I got sick, it was really a mind, like, wait, how has this happened to me? How is it that I went from this optimal state of well-being over the last 27 years since being proactive in my journey and making conscious choices to make consistent, sustainable changes that I embraced as a lifestyle? How am I this sick? How am I here? And so there was a brief period where, I was bedridden for over 10 months. I was in failure to thrive. I mean, it got really bad. Every organ shut down. And so there was a piece where I did feel like a victim, but I had the capacity to quickly identify the gift in all of this. And the gift is that because I had lost so much touch with the rest of where society was living from, that it allowed me to create an empathy and a greater understanding, which is why I chose to navigate the allopathic as well as the holistic way, because I wanted to see, what is most people suffering. For over 20 years, I didn't even have health insurance. I didn't need health insurance because, I was doing all the things, maintaining all of the things. And so for me, I really hadn't subjected myself back to that system in decades. And when I did, it was outrageous. I got diagnosed with about 9 different autoimmune diseases, and specialist after specialist, they just kept agreeing. We can all agree that your body is stuck in a chronic state of fight or flight. However, there is no medication or surgical procedure that we can offer you. So all we can say is best of luck. And I was so grateful that my intuition said, no, it doesn't have to be this way. There is another way, and I'm going to figure it out. And through God's grace, I actually went up to a spiritual retreat in spring of 23 in hopes that God was going to give me the answer. So when I was leaving that retreat and I didn't feel like I had my answer, I get to the airport and my flight has been canceled, and they're saying it doesn't fly out until the following Thursday. And I have a biopsy that's scheduled on Friday for all the tumors that were in my breast and ovaries, liver and lungs at that point. So I'm like, no, I got to get back. Well, long story short, at the end of the day, it was all a blessing from God, because on my third layover to get back home that evening, I ended up encountering an individual. I had at the time, I was using something called the Healy. Are you familiar with that technology? It's
I
a
am.
vibrational
Yep.
frequency device.
Absolutely. Sure.
So I had been using the Healy from 2019 all the way up to this point, except the difference was I'm having to use it 10 to 16 hours a day just to keep myself in a position where I can get up and move from my bed.
Sure.
And so I'm talking about this Healy, and this individual sitting at the end of the bench, and she happens to interrupt and she says, "I'm the person who designed all of those frequencies for that product." And so my encounter with her was a game changer, because this led me down the pathway to discover the healing modalities that were going to get me out of failure to thrive, back up in operation, so that I could start taking all of this information that I had learned and start sharing it with others. And this is where polarity and, our electrical being that we are came into my awareness. And that was a complete game changer. And I've spent the last year investing in about $100,000 worth of medical grade tools to not only keep myself in an optimized state, but also to help, allow others to experience the amazingness from all of it as well.
Yeah, that's great. God is so good. You,
Right?
you think you had to get back for the biopsy, but meanwhile, he gave you the real path. You just had to wait a little bit longer for her to show up, right? And be there.
Yep. You got it. And just ironically, what was even funnier about this whole story is I ended up having the biopsy on that following Friday, came home, was laying on the couch, and I had the TV on and I was listening to an interview, kind of going in and out of consciousness. And all of a sudden, I start hearing this information that sounds really familiar. So I hit info on the TV, and it happens to be an interview with the doctor that this woman told me I needed to get in contact with. And so I don't know if you're familiar with Dr. Jerry Tennant, but Dr. Jerry Tennant has been a huge piece of my journey and my ability to get to the state that I am. So I'm very grateful for his determination and the work that he's done, despite all of the pushback that he's gotten from the medical system and just, society and as a whole. So
Yeah.
I'm very, very grateful for all the biohackers out there who just won't take no for an answer and keep following their intuition to seek the true things that are going to get us better.
Yeah, I mean that's a really great book. First of all, you just happen to be listening to the TV in and out of conscious, and you heard just the one thing that you needed to hear, and boom, there he is.
Yeah.
I was at a conference in June, this past June. We have to get our continuing education, so go to a couple of every year. And one of our particular presenters, a chiropractic physician into functional medicine, was expressing negativity that why is Joe Rogan the one that everybody's listening to, and why are all the people that he's bringing on the show giving all this health information? They're not doctors. But his point was that we, as chiropractors who believe in the body, we're the ones that should be making all that noise. Now, I heard what he said, but I raised my hand and said, but it's the Joe Rogans of the world that are making the general public aware of these things that they're not getting from mainstream medical. So I say kudos to that, because then it gives us as chiropractors more of an audience, because if we just start talking about it from our own office, there's too much education that has to happen for people to start really understanding and be seeking it out. But because of that, we're able to find people that are actually looking for these things now. I mean, Gary Brecken was with Joe Rogan in November. He has Superhuman Protocol 2 in his place in Miami, and I have it here in Boca Raton. Nobody else has it in a commercial setting. I've had it almost 3 years, but nobody was searching for it. But he gets on Joe Rogan, the search engine activity goes crazy. And I've had 15 new people in the last 3 months because they saw that and they said, Superhuman near me. I'm the only one. So
that's amazing.
Yeah. So the community awareness is so important with these things. And so again, it's up to people like you and I and other professionals that are taking their personal journey on the road with a professional and a way to, help somebody else that has a deficit that you've come over or I've overcome, and, seeing all these new modalities that you don't see, in places like all around. They're alternative, but they really should be mainstream. We become the cornerstone of a new healthcare system that people get to, take control of themselves.
Absolutely. You know, it's funny. When I decided that I was going to become a registered dietitian nutritionist, I knew I was going into an indoctrinated system that was, supported through corruption, and that I couldn't align with those practices. However, I knew that I needed to be licensed so that I could practice medical nutrition therapy and offer the services that are so desperately needed to others. But when I was going through that education, the things that you and I are talking about, these were deemed quackery. These, any kind of talk around the things that you and I are emphasizing, these were very much stigmatized. And so it was really awesome that I had so much clarity and understanding going into the indoctrinated field so that I didn't get corrupted and tossed out just like another cookie cutter, model of what big pharma and big food are hoping and praying for. And so I feel so fortunate, so fortunate to be coming from the place that I am. And this is something that I'm extremely passionate about. So hearing conversations like this being had on Joe Rogan is exciting, because I know that that seed of awareness is getting planted, and it's just a matter of time before it starts becoming more mainstream. It's just kind of like, when you see a car that you desperately want, you're like, oh my gosh, I want that new light blue Bronco. It's the coolest thing I've ever seen. And then next thing you know, there's light blue Broncos at every single stoplight, every single stop sign. And it's because that's how contagious that information is. Once the seed's been planted, it's in that consciousness. We're all connected, and it's just a matter of time before it reaches the masses. So I truly am excited as a healthcare practitioner with where we are currently at. And I trust so deeply with where we're going as a society and as a whole, for humanity. I think that beautiful things are awaiting us.
Yes. So, to that note, one of the things that I really get to enjoy is I have a lot of young people that want to shadow me for the day. They might be looking to go into nursing or a PA program or some other, healthcare practitioner. And maybe they're parents of patients of mine, or they've heard about me. But I've had a lot of young people coming through here. And even though they might be heading into that traditional, medical model in terms of going to school, they get to see something different here. And there hasn't been a single one of them that hasn't come through here and saying, wow, this is really cool. I could really see myself doing something like that. So that's a nice piece to be able to influence that next generation of people that, like yourself, they have to go into the, indoctrinating, school systems there, but they don't have to have that mindset, so they can have their own plan when they come out. That's going to be more, about tapping into cellular health, or whatever the direction they take. It's going to be about getting the body to do its best work. So that's another thing that I've been fortunate, especially in this last year. A lot more of them are coming through, and it's a lot of fun. It's not like being at work. It's just like being in a big place where a lot of people are doing some really cool things, and there's people looking at it and saying, wow, this is so cool, doing some Instagram posts on it and things like that. And it's just another layer of just really enjoying, this journey of, being innovative and, cutting edge with things, and seeing a whole new generation of young people that get it, and they want to reach for that, as opposed to sort of backwards. There's not a day that doesn't bring some new excitement of some new exposure and some new person to help redirect their, the quality of their life, being a part of that. It's not your job or my job to be all of that, but to be a part of that, to just give them hope too. I mean, like yourself, I can't tell you how many people come here. I'm their last hope, and they actually gave up, but somebody that knows me convinced them, you got to go see this guy, you got to talk to him. And to see that. And a lot of people, I've had so many people just break down, because they didn't even want to be hopeful, because they were just already resigned that this is the way it's going to be. And they gave up, but then something told them that maybe I'll try one more time. And I've been in that position a lot, so that I don't take that lightly, and I make sure that I don't overpromise anything but I do promise that I'm going to do my very best to help them get out of this, because I don't believe that pain is a lifestyle. I don't believe that being unhealthy in any way. I think optimal health is something that should be our lifestyle. You can't achieve it by just asking for it. You have to invest in it, like we've been saying, but it is possible. So I love that part of my, work too, when I get to get somebody that had already, but given up.
No, that's so beautiful. I have so much respect for you. You come across as a truly genuine, authentic being who is truly here to help service others at achieving their best life yet. And I love that. I think that is just such a beautiful sentiment of your being, and it radiates off of you. I had a client recently who had been referred to me, and she had lost her hearing. She had no hearing for a little over 2 years and had tried everything, had been on every kind of antibiotic, every steroid possible. And so a friend of mine had told her about me and the things that I was doing. And so she said, what else do I have to lose? These guys aren't getting me any closer to the goal.
Right.
So we put her through that program. And it was really amazing because about after 3 sessions, she had recovered hearing in her left ear. And then by 6 sessions, she had recovered full hearing in her right ear. So by the end of the 12-week protocol, she had regained all of her hearing, but not just that. She had also lost over 35 pounds in the process.
Oh, wow.
And what was so amazing about this is that this journey was never about weight loss. This journey was about recovering hearing and having to get to the basic components of what is stopping your body from having the capacity to manage this chronic infection appropriately so that, it could clear out all of the stuff. And I have to admit, scalar energy, scalar light was a huge, huge piece in helping to get her into the right position just by correcting polarity, getting polarity into its correct order so that all of the other tools could do what they needed to do. So it's just really beautiful to have the opportunity to sit back and watch these kind of transformations happen over and over again. And it just sits, it just makes you sit back and go, man, God is good. God is great. Literally, we have everything we need. We have everything we need. Our natural rights, everything we need is here in nature. So for the individual who's listening, who is really struggling, but of course, they're in doubt financially, they don't want to necessarily, invest in some sort of program. What kind of practical tips can you give them to get started so that they can start seeing results and then maybe, increase confidence in wanting to pursue things further?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so I get it all the time here, because a lot of people that are looking at the Superhuman protocol, I say, look, if you can't commit to the time to come into the office and the economics don't work, we're taking 3 aspects of what the natural world has given us. God gave us electromagnetic activity for the earth for us, gave us oxygen in the air to breathe, gave us light from the sun to help, optimize our energy production, our cell level. Go to the beach or some other place where you have sunshine and fresh air, do deep breathing exercises, get barefoot, get to the earth, breathe deep oxygen and get that light. You can achieve the Superhuman protocol by putting a focus into it, because most people these days are living in, artificial environments indoors. And look, granted, in South Florida in summer, it's hot, but you could still get out to the beach and do that and recharge yourself every day. And you could do that, wherever you live, in the Midwest or in the mountains. Those are things that you could do, and you're just using the power that is already here. Like you said before, is here for us, that we have to get back to that. We have to step away from the modern world and back into the natural world. I think cold plunging is a great thing to do. If you don't have a place nearby, it's actually very inexpensive to create your own. There's companies that make just the engines to turn your own bathtub into, or the motor to turn it into a cold plunge. So cold therapy has such great benefit for the body too. And so those things are the kinds of things that you could do without spending a lot of money. You just have to be dedicated to doing that stuff. And basics too. You got to make sure your hydration is right. You need to be drinking at least half of your body weight in ounces every day. If you weigh 100 pounds, it's 50 ounces. If you exercise on top of that or have a lot of outdoor activity, you got to probably add 20% to that. You need to take electrolytes because the soil that we eat food from doesn't have the nutritional value that it used to, unless you're really getting it from local farms, which maybe in the Midwest, that's a little bit easier to do than some of the other places around the country. But getting all those basics is all you need, because listen, when I grew up, I was born in the early 1960s, the food was still good. All the world around us hadn't been as polluted as it is now. We were active all the time. There was nothing to do inside. You didn't watch TV. You're outside doing all the things that we do. And so getting back to the nature around us in that natural world, the more we can delve into that and plant ourselves on a regular basis, I think that's probably one of the best things you do. I guarantee anybody that doesn't feel good and just starts doing that, they're going to start feeling so much better.
I agree with you completely. And as you were talking, you triggered me. So back in 2015, I wrote this book, Getting Intimate in the Kitchen, and it's about getting back to the basics. Like, what the heck, where did it all go wrong? And when we stopped using our kitchen as the medicine cabinet for our home and family is when things really started to go wrong, when we started to become, overly dependent on these refined processed foods. And just one thing I want to speak to, because nutrition is such a huge piece of my belief system, I feel very strongly if we don't start making massive changes right now with our purchasing power and how we're allocating our financial resources to support our food supply, we're in a very, very tricky spot with where the big systems are trying to lead us. And so it's more evident now that we start to be proactive with educating ourselves. I have an incredible, 7-day thing that you can download that gives you all of the basic information on how to navigate the grocery store in a more healthful way and not be consumed by all of the propaganda and the advertising of these food products. But we have to start now, and we have to start with our youth. Our youth have lower life expectancies than their parents do, and that is absolutely frightening. I have this really fancy tool that I put people on that allows us to measure what their actual cellular function looks like, what that actually looks like. And when I get children as young as 6, 7, and 8 years old on this machine, and the numbers that it's outputting are so detrimentally low, it tells me everything I need to know about their diet and the foods that they're being provided, because essentially their cell membranes are just plastic and they don't have the capacity to hold the electronic charge that is needed in order to keep that cell functioning optimally. So for all the parents out there that are listening, if you're not willing to do it for yourself, at least do it for your children, because they don't have the ability to do it for themselves per se. I try to encourage my nephews and my nieces to be as proactive as possible with learning how to take care of their human basic needs in a very simple but more healthful, approach. And I think that if we can teach this to the youth, we can really shift the trajectory of where things are heading for their health outcomes in the future.
Amen. I mean, I think that's probably one of the best things we could offer. There's a small percentage of, adults that'll latch onto this now, but the youth, I think they have the greatest chance of being the little lieutenants out there that, start to share this with their friends. And, that I think that's the best way that this type of information can be spread with young people too, and start them again at that young age where that becomes their lifestyle. And you can undo the whole paradigm of where we've, just been coming out of now.
Yeah. And, for you, you had a role model, and then you also had heroes in a sense through all of the superhero figures out there. And it's funny because as you were telling me this, I was that little girl who was obsessed with all of the superheroes. I wanted to be Wonder Woman. I wanted to be them all. I wanted to be the Power Rangers, you name it. The Hulk, was one of my first crushes. And so I think it's important. I think what I'm trying to get at is that what I've seen over my life journey is that specifically with men within your age range to my age range, the ones that embrace the healthy lifestyle was because they either had a mentor, some sort of neighbor that literally lived next door that was modeling this, or maybe a parent or a sibling or uncle, or it was their love for one of these superhero type of figures. And that was the motivation. So how do we get our youth back? How can we motivate them?
Well, I think when you have an opportunity to represent something that they can strive for and achieve, and I'll tell you part of my motivation too, I didn't get to mention this, but when I was 10 and started exercising, by the time I was about 15 or 16, I was in good shape because nobody really worked out. Again, they played and stuff, but I was like this. I had biceps and arms and stuff like that. So my dad and his friends were in their 40s at the time, and one particular friend that lived down the street, he was a nice man, kind of a loudmouth, know-it-all kind of man, but very nice. And he would say, "Oh, I used to look like you when I was your age, but after 40, it's all downhill." That put a motivation in me past where I started at 10 years old, that I wasn't going to be that person. And so far, I'm 20 something years past that point, proving that that is not right. Because you can accelerate in your fitness as you get older. You don't have to decline if that's not what you choose to do. And you're either growing or you're degenerating. There's no third direction. Maintenance doesn't exist. There's nothing that stays the same. So I choose to be growing and stimulating growth and regeneration throughout my life. So in my 60s, when my grandparents were there, they were very old. Not me. I feel like I'm in my 30s, and it's proven by my capacity, how I feel every day. And I do get to see people that are 20, 30, 40 years younger than me that come in and they say, "Wow, you're in your 60s, that's amazing." And it is motivating to them because it gives them the chance to see, wow, there's guys that are older that are still in great shape. That means I could do that. And I try to encourage people to do that, because there was a brief period when I was in my 20s, I saw guys in their 50s and 60s in the gym working out, and I wanted to work out around them just to see guys in their 50s and 60s working out and being in good shape, as opposed to being old. So I think we can represent that by being older and showing those young people, even if it's not their parents, that, yeah, this is possible. Are you willing to do what it takes to do this every day? It's a small price to pay to feel good as you move forward through your life. That's what we can tell them.
Priceless. I have to say that if it weren't for my healthy lifestyle practices, the 27 years prior to me contracting that 104 fever, I probably would not be alive. Honestly, I don't believe that I would have had the capacity to maintain my life had I not done what I had for the previous decades, because it really helped to support me to at least hang in there in that failure to thrive, so that I could at least access the information and the tools eventually to get me over that hump and bring me back to a state of well-being. So I'm truly grateful for everything that we have available to us, all of the information, all of the tools, conversations like this, having the opportunity to just chat about these things and bring awareness to others.
Absolutely. Well, I can promise you this, I'll be back.
I love that. Well, I can't wait to have you back. Well, Dr. David Lipman, thank you so much for joining us today. This has really been a very rewarding conversation. So tell the audience, where can they find you? How can they learn more about your Superhuman program?
Yeah, so Physical Evidence is the name of the practice. It's in Boca Raton, Florida. It's Dr. David Lipman, L-I-P as in Peter, M-A-N. Physical Evidence, again, it's a chiropractic office, but it's so much more. It is a biooptimization center. And on Instagram, we're at Boca Raton Chiropractor. A lot of great information there. I have a great young lady that does all of my social, so she gets to capture a lot of the uniqueness and the different layers of what we have here. Even the chiropractic itself, we call chirofusion, because we meld together and incorporate so many different aspects to get that full body, re-engineering process. But it all comes down to getting back to function, musculoskeletal function, cellular function, biochemical function. all of it. That's what we do here. And that's what we emphasize. And again, become a resource to people so they can learn how to do that. Even if they're not going to ever step foot into my office, I'm happy to talk to people on the phone or have Zoom meetings with. There's still a lot of good information I get to share.
I love that. And thank you so much for your dedication to this purpose. It's very obvious that you are living out your purpose-driven life, and it's so beautiful to see it happening in real time, and for all of the beautifulness that you have to help offer others. What a blessing. It's truly been an honor to have the chat with you today, and I really do look forward to connecting again soon.
It's my honor. Thank you, Heather. Thank you so much for having me today.
Thanks for listening to the Think Yourself Healthy podcast. Do me a favor, and if you loved this episode, please go leave a review. Reviews help make sure that this content reaches more people so that we can continue to heal as a collective. Remember to take a screenshot that you're listening and tag us on Instagram at Heather Barbieri RDN for a 15% discount on the Retrain Your Brain program. See you next time.